Right, the painting is bone dry now. The leaf is dried and the blackberry is dried, and as you can see, the leaf looks a lot softer, doesn't it, than when we left it. And water does that. It carries on changing right up until the point when it's bone dry. So you need to give the leaf time to dry and then assess it then, rather than thinking, oh, I don't like it at the moment. So let's zoom in now and do a bit more work on the blackberry fruit itself. So I'm going to moisten my brush and pick up some, this is a size 3 brush, some Alizarin Crimson, some French Ultramarine Blue, gives us that deep velvety sort of reddish purple colour, and a little bit of Winsor Violet. I'm picking up some droplets of water on my palette because I feel it's not liquid enough. It was a bit too gooey, a bit too sticky. So little by little I'm adding Winsor Violet. I never add this in a big lump because it's so strong, it's hard to judge what it's going to be like. Right, I'm looking at that, I'm looking at my blackberry, and the colour I've got now is not quite there, it's still a bit too red. So this is why I have a testing piece of paper at hand just to help me gauge my colours a bit better. Right, again I'm dragging in some more droplets of water to thin this down a little bit. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to moisten another size 3 brush, another small brush, to be on hand to soften things. So I'm going to moisten that in clear water, dry the handle, then moisten it again, and then I flicked it, but I haven't dried it. So that's got a slight bit of moisture in there, which is ready to be a blending brush. So let's now start going in around these little globule areas. Let's just pretend we're filling in, say we're putting some sort of grout in between tiles. Okay, that's the best way to describe it. And this will push the highlighted edges forward and give us the depth, the crevices in between the little round, little juicy blobs, I don't know what they're called. That will show them off a bit more. And again, haven't got to do every single one. Just do the ones you can make out. I can't make out all of them, to be honest. So I'm just going, as best I can, creating some curved areas here and some dark creviced areas there. Art, it's an approximation. I always say that. I don't want to get things exactly right, and I don't think I could get things exactly right. And I think that's what people most like about a painting, is that it's not a photograph. It's got the limitations and the qualities and of the person painting it, and what I care about or don't, right? And we're all different. So only by trying out different styles of painting will you find out what you like. If you don't like painting this way, then maybe more hard realism is for you, or if you find this too detailed, then obviously you might want to go more towards abstraction. So I've dropped some of those dark crevice colours in now, and because the blackberry was dry, that paint now is soaked in. And so if I come along with a slightly moist, I've just dipped it in the water again, and I've got this slightly moist size 3 brush, I'm just going to gently swoosh back and forth, and this now will slightly dislodge and soften some of those crevices. If I just give the moisture time to start working, takes a few seconds for it to impregnate the paper. Rinse my brush again, flick it, but don't dry it on a flannel because I need that little amount of moisture that's in the brush after I flick it really hard. And so I'm going over those hard dark patches that I did and softening them a bit. And this now gives us another layer of detail on the blackberry. So those hard edges are diminishing, aren't they? They're dissolving. Right, now at this stage I've got to decide what to sacrifice, because right now everything is the same all over. This area is as dark as this, is as dark as this, so I need to go darker now. So I'm going to pick up a lot more of that violet-y, dark violet mix that I just used, and I'm going to say that this now is really the shadow area. This third of the blackberry on the right hand side, I'm going to paint this much darker. So that means I've got to sacrifice some of my detail, because when things are in the dark you don't see the detail as much. So that's about a third, isn't it? And the rest then, about 2/3 left untouched. I'm going to darken some of these ones, these blobs right down there, because they would be in shadow. Let's darken that one as well. Okay. Right, I'm going to stop that with the darkening. And now to lighten. Now you could either have put a little speck of masking fluid on the on the left hand side of all these globules and painted over it, or you could have not painted it when the first wash went on. See, I cut around those tiny little slivers of white. Or now what you can do is you can come along with a scalpel or a craft knife and you can cut them out. This is still a little bit damp actually. I should have waited till it was bone dry, but you get the idea. And you get some bright highlights then on the left hand side of the blackberry. Okay, and so that's our blackberry, and I'm going to stop there. Let's look at the little pink flower now. Zoom in. So as you can see, I started to do 2 petals, and they're very pale. They were just painted with very diluted Alizarin Crimson on dry paper. So I'm going to continue that to show you how pale it is. I could have chosen to use Rose Madder or another very delicate pink, you know. But you can also water Alizarin Crimson down to the degree that it looks as a very soft pink as well. So we'll do that. I'm adding a lot of water to this alizarin, and it's giving me a very delicate pink. So to continue with this, I'm using a size 3 brush. I'm going to put the darkest area down there in the middle of the petal, and then start in the outer and then drag, you know, fuse it, leaving some white of the petal unpainted and a few little veins. That will dry a lot darker. Okay, let's go back on top of this one that I painted before and give it a bit more, because it was a bit too pale. So this is again wet paint on dry paper. If I go up against this one, the two will bleed into each other. Well, that's okay, I can live with that. The reason I'm leaving a bit of white in that area of the petal is because it's curving over and I'm suggesting a white highlight there. What I can do as well is take a tiny little bit of tissue paper and just pat in places to just lose a little bit of the paint, so it gives us a bit of lost and found. So again, the darkest pink near the centre, and then some of the darker pink on the outer rim of the petal, and then these sort of like little slightly curved veins to suggest the curve of the petal. The trick is to make those curves a bit irregular so they don't look too set. Then again with the tissue I'm just going to press that in places just to soften it down. Okay, so the rest of the petals I'm going to do in that way, and I'm going to go off camera to do that. So okay, have you done that? Now I'm going to work on the inside of the petal, so I'm going to pick up a little droplet of water, tiny bit of raw sienna, and a little bit of burnt umber, just a sort of darkish colour. And there are these little halo, little speckles, aren't there? I've already done some, as you can see, but I'm going to add some more now, and maybe add a bigger splodge in the middle, but again, make it an irregular circle. I don't want it too perfect. The star of the show isn't the flower, the star of the show are our blackberries, so I'm not doing a lot more on that, apart from some shadow on the rose madder petals. So the opposite of rose madder is sap green. So I'm just going to get a very dilute bit of Alizarin Crimson. I'm going to use my size 0 brush, my smallest brush. It's a tiny brush, and I'm going to pick up a tiny speck, very little bit of sap green. That looks like way too much, so I'm going to brush some off and then pick it up. Right, now that looks just slightly dulled, but when I put it on this petal it looks much stronger, doesn't it? So this is just a bit more shadow work. I'm pretending that these petals are underneath these petals. So that one is underneath that one, this one is underneath that one, and well, let's just have a bit of a shadow there to suggest this leaf is casting a bit of a shadow. And we can take some of these little veins over as well. So it just gives a tiny bit of strength to the petals and makes them a little bit more believable, right? Right, I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so we need to go back now to the leaf, so let's have a look at finishing that off. To finish this leaf off, I'm going to use a mix of Alizarin Crimson with my size 5 brush and some burnt umber. So it's a slightly browned red. I'm going to have a size 3 round at the ready. I'm going to rinse it, wipe the handle, but don't wipe the hairs because we need that to blend in a second. I want a bit more strength in this leaf, so I want this central vein so as you can see I've sort of skipped a little bit. I haven't done a solid line. I want to add some veins, and I'm taking them alternately. I'm not going 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm doing them in between each other. To make them a bit more irregular. And if you leave the paper in some places, you know, if you sort of skip along and leave the paper, that's fine. A broken line is good. Now I'm coming in and doing some very sharp work. This is on dry paper. I'm making these tips of the blackberry in places, blackberry leaf, very sharp. Give that spiky feeling, which will contrast with the juicy blackberries, the softness of the juicy blackberries. Oh, that's a bit blunt, isn't it? Okay. And not all the way down. Now, that moist brush, I'm going to again come on here, and wherever I've just painted, I'm going to drag it and loosen it and soften it very slightly into the direction of the leaf. So I'm curving it along back into that central spine. You might need to rub on top of a little area for a few seconds to get it to dissolve. Then rinse my brush, flick it again, and I've got a tiny bit of moisture in there. I can go along that vein just to soften its appearance. You know, this is really sort of fine tuning and always done at the end of the painting. You don't want to do any of this work really at the beginning, because any broad strokes and washes you put on will destroy all your fine work. So I leave all of this till the end. So I'm softening those hard lines that I put on dry paper. So again, doing that gives us another look, another way of applying watercolour. I'm going to choose to have the same colour again. It's this Alizarin Crimson and Burnt Umber. Some of these, I want to push that white petal there, so some of these veins that are taking my eye out to the tip, I'm going to choose to have them a bit stronger. And then tapering them away to nothing as they get near those spiky tips. And again, rinse my size 3 brush. Flick that hard and use the moisture that I've got left to soften those hard edges of the passages of colour I've just done away. Maybe carry it into the petal there. Rinse again. Soften that. And you know, I think I'm going to stop there with that leaf. There's a bit of an uncomfortable area at the moment that I can see. This is wrong here, it's stopping, so I need to create a similar one under there to sort of help that describe the leaf a bit better, otherwise it feels a bit lopsided. And maybe have one there to help us believe that the leaf is going behind the flower, the blackberry flower, and maybe a bit more there. So I need to soften those out. So again, rinse my size 3 brush and just soften that out. You have to do it quickly, you mustn't wait a long time, because the paper will capture the paint and grab hold of it and make it hard for you to soften the edges. So as you can see, I'm pressing my brush down, you know, to the metal, pressing it down and dragging it out. So use the flat of your brush to coax the colour out. And I think I'll leave it at that. But while I've still got that strong red brown on, I'm just going to pop in a few darker little speckles in this halo in the blackberry plant. So I think that'll give us another dimension, another lift. like that. And then I'm going to do a few spiky veins on this one, just so it'll just match and chime with the rest of the painting. I'm not going to finish all of this today, but I want you to just try and do your own thing with this now, with the techniques that I've showed you, and have a go. Allow yourself to do a study. Don't set off every painting session with the idea of painting a completed painting. Musicians, when they're studying, they don't set off to you know, play a whole symphony, do they? They learn pieces, and this is like a musical piece. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just say, okay, I'm going to paint some leaves and 1 or 2 blackberries today. And then when you come to paint a full-blown, you know, hedgerow scene with blackberries and stuff, you'll have had practice. Alright, finally, to finish off, we're going to do the little green leaves. I can see that I haven't done that other blackberry. Again, you can do that using the same techniques that I've used today. I'm going to just finish off the little green leaves on the blackberry. Some permanent sap green and a bit of Alizarin Crimson, because they are both opposite on the colour wheel and they make a nice green, a nice shadow green. So let's pop in some shadow under the right hand side of the leaves there, and on the right hand side of some of these little stems. To give it a bit of a 3D effect. In order to have something sunlit, you need to have something next door to it that's in shadow, don't you? You have to have contrast. You can't have everything light, because then nothing will look light. So it's scary in watercolour, I know, to sacrifice all the lightness that you want, that you've got. But without it, you just will have a flat painting that's very hesitant, and you need the contrast. So again, these are quite simple leaves. They're not, you know, very detailed, but it just gives you the idea of shadow on one area and light in the other area. Hopefully it'll give them a bit more believability. And if you did want to soften any of those dark green areas away, just take your moist size 3 brush and moisten the edge in places. You can leave some of the edges hard and have some of the edges soft. It's nice to have a contrast of hard and soft edges in a painting. And just to finish, if you're wondering how I would finish this blackberry here, I would simply get some Alizarin Crimson, French Ultramarine Blue as we did before, and again I would paint in some of these, you know, darker sort of crevices in between the fruit, the little blobs, using my reference drawing to help me know where those little arcs, those little sort of curves are in between each little juicy bit. I still don't know what they are called. And remember that you've got to sacrifice one side of the blackberry to darkness if you want to help your painting look a bit more realistic. And up near the shoulder, you know, where it joins the leaf, that's probably going to be a bit darker as well. So I'll darken that now. See, now that I'm carrying on, I feel like I need to put some of that blackberry colour in those speckles there, just to give it a bit more zip in some places. Yeah. And get carried away now. This colour can go in some of the tips of the leaf, this very strong, just to finish off. These are the finest, you know, final things that you do to make your painting pop. Very fine. Just a few little touches like that, give it a bit more finish. So going back to that blackberry I just did, moist brush, and then just soften some of those hard dark marks I just painted wet onto dry. Let's soften them a bit now with a moist brush. And tidy any ragged edges up, because the thing with blackberries is they have got rounded elements in them, haven't they? So I'm just softening any scraggy brush marks that I made. And I think we'll call it a day. So if you'd like to have the outline or the reference photos, email me at alisonfennell@hotmail.com and I'll send them to you. Thanks for watching. Bye.